Hi, I'm Penny the Angel.
Are you ready to be scared?
Hello, my little devil darlings. This is Penny the Angelic Sweetheart here, and welcome to another episode of the returning series called Frightful Fridays. Now, sit back, relax, grab yourself a snack, eat lunch or dinner, depending on whatever time zone you live in and what time it is, and let's get right into it, shall we? Alright, the first video that we're going to be reacting to this week is called 6 Paranormal Videos to Keep You Up at Night. So, yeah, that's another paranormal video that I reacted to a while back. Excuse me. And this was uploaded by Mr. Nightmare, and all credit goes to Mr. Nightmare. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and watch it, shall we?
A Redditor by the name of Jessica shared footage she recorded in the Airbnb she was renting.
Okay.
There wasn't supposed to be anybody else in the rental, and she didn't even meet the owners as the keys were left in the mailbox. Shortly into her stay, she was getting ready to take a shower.
That is red flag number 1. You don't meet the owners. Would you want to stay there after not meeting the owners? I wouldn't. Seriously. Anyway, let's continue.
When she started hearing sounds from inside the walls. She rushed to get her camera and get the sounds on video. This is what she captured. As you can see, after finding a sealed ventilation duct and pulling the seal off of it, the terrifying voices of people speaking Latin became much clearer and sound as though they were speaking the Trinitarian formula and other religious phrases. Strangely, the voices apparently fell silent abruptly, but that wasn't where the nightmarish experience ended for Jessica. That night, with the bathroom door open and the bathroom light on, a picture was taken of her as she was sleeping, and the person who took the picture was holding a note in front of the camera that said it's rude to eavesdrop.
Leave. Get out. Right now. Right the hell now. Get out of there. I would not stay there. Hell no. And besides, technically, I don't think that was paranormal if it was real people, but still. Hell no. Okay, let's continue.
This was the security footage recorded one rainy night in Huacho, Brazil. In the recording, a confused-looking woman is seen walking through the street in the rain. And at first this seems relatively normal, nothing too unusual, until the woman seems to slowly disappear as she gets closer to the bottom of the screen, until she vanishes altogether. When zoomed in, you can also see the woman seems scantily dressed for the weather conditions seen in the video. Sure, someone can say it's just a smudge on the screen or perhaps some other digital problem. However, moments later, a motorcycle passes by in the same region in which the woman seemed to vanish, yet it's completely visible. And then the same could be said with the truck as it makes its turn, completely visible. It also appears that the driver of the truck may have been reacting to what he also just witnessed to be a vanishing woman.
I'm gonna be honest with you. That does not look real to me. That looks fake. Like, as if it was very well edited to make it look like it's real, but if I was younger, I probably would have fallen for that, but nah. I think that's fake. I don't think it's real.
Whether this was just camera trickery or really a wandering apparition is up to the viewer to decide.
I think it's fake.
This video was captured in Costa Rica on someone's home security camera. At an off hour in the night, out from the woods comes a bizarre, horrifying-looking creature. At first, one might assume it's just a person doing some kind of crab walk, or if this were Australia, they would just assume it's another spider. But you don't even have to watch too closely to ask why or how the arms and legs would be the same length if this were a person. If it was just a person contorting his or her body, the creature wouldn't appear as long as it does and would most likely have a noticeable lump in its back from them contorting their torso. Also, based on the dog's reactions, this was not the work of CGI, as they were reacting to something that's actually there and cause for alarm.
I don't know if that's fake or not, but that was freaky! Imagine you being home alone at night, and it's very dark, and you hear your dogs barking, and then you go out and see what they're... Well, you don't actually go outside, but you go to the window in your house, see what they're barking at, and then you see that. What will you do? What would you do? I'd freaking panic, man. I would panic. And I'm surprised that thing, or whatever it is, if in that video, didn't actually try to hurt the dogs. But it does look like a person, like, doing a very good job mimicking a freaking inhuman creature. But yeah, I don't know if that's real or not. So, I'll let you guys decide in the comments if it's real or not. But
this fourth video was taken from the Japanese YouTube channel Omogotoki Films. Their channel focuses on exploring haunted locations and capturing paranormal events on video. In January of this year, the owners of the channel were contacted by a real estate agent regarding a house he's been having trouble selling, due to the fact that the house used to be owned by a family that mysteriously disappeared in 2013.
僕が前勤めていた不動産屋さんの元先輩、何やら僕らに対してちょっと一度見てほしい物件。
その古い戸建てを会社で買ったんだけど、急に飛び込みできた人で、いくらで売りたいか聞くじゃん。で、そしたらもう本当破格の
売り主さんが持っていたその土地の上に3人の家族が家を建てて住み始めたらしいんですよね。ただ今から6、7年ぐらい前にある日を境にその3人
All of the previous owner's belongings were left in the house, adding to the mystery. The real estate agent refuses to even enter the house, as he believes there's a dark entity in the house, and he hopes that they would be able to search the house and find any kind of explanation, as this is what they do for a living. The agent mentions to them to make sure to keep all the doors shut while investigating the house, but doesn't mention why. As the two are exploring this closet, they notice something after reviewing the footage. See if you can find it.
ほら、もう全部開いてるもん。
ああ、確かに確かに。すっごい、本当ロゴがやばい。
If you didn't see it, behind a clothes rack, you can see two bare feet underneath. This isn't the last time they can be seen. As they search a nearby room, the feet can be seen again, this time much closer and visibly barefoot. Later on in the night, one of the two decide to place a camera in the dark and sit in one room, waiting for something to happen. After about 15 minutes, he decided to investigate other rooms, while still remembering to shut all the doors behind him.
face!
As you just saw, there was a face looking in through the door. But as he approaches, it disappears. There's no one outside the door. It could be speculated that the house is haunted by the family that mysteriously disappeared almost a decade ago.
How did they disappear? That's the number one question.
This was some alleged sighting of La Llorona. La Llorona is known as a ghost who roams waterfront areas mourning her drowned children. This video was captured in León, Guanajuato, Mexico. The video is of a man running from what resembles La Llorona. In the video, if you slow it down and zoom in, the figure in the distance resembles a woman in a white dress crying and yelling. The man was coming home from a party around 3 o'clock in the morning when he encountered the woman in front of him. As he starts to run in fear, the woman starts shouting at him, not making any sense of what she's saying. The man allegedly died 3 days after the sighting, and the cause of death was ruled a heart attack. This video was recorded in November of 2020, and it's just recently getting noticed.
I think it's fake, honestly. I don't think it's real.
This was the footage captured by Russian YouTuber Dark Ghost. He posts high-quality ghost hunting videos, and this one might be one of his scariest. A woman had written to him about her deceased son who was obsessed with the paranormal and finding out what happens to the human soul after death and the afterlife. One day he told his mother that he discovered a way to contact deceased relatives, and he traveled to the abandoned village where his late grandmother lived. A week later, the mother received a call from the son, saying he was hearing the voices of his grandparents among other entities. This call was the last that was heard of the son, and his body was found on the streets of the village. The cause of death was ruled to be acute heart failure. The mother asked Dark Ghost to visit the grandparents' old house where the son would often visit, and this was some of the footage he captured. Various sounds such as footsteps and knocks can be heard throughout the video, and on multiple occasions, doors and cabinets can be seen swinging open or closed on their own.
What? What?
If you didn't see it, a black shadow can be seen floating across the screen clear as day.
I saw it!
Либо шкаф все грохочет, я не понимаю, либо комод. Опа.
Next, he enters a creepy red room populated with disturbing pictures that the woman's son would collect and bring to the house.
No.
Oh!
Как? Ну вообще всего
Your son
такого
had
как бы
serious
фотографии.
issues. Oh hell no. Oh, hell no, man.
This is definitely one of those houses that an explorer should not go to alone. Based on the events in this video, there may have been someone or something in the house with him, watching him the entire time. Could it be the spirit of the woman's son? Or perhaps a much more hostile entity? Or could it all just be trickery? As usual, that's up for you to decide.
I do not think that one was fake. I think that one was actually real. A couple of them I didn't really buy, but that one looks real as heck to me. And those pictures! That guy had serious issues. I mean, the son had serious issues. Hell no, man. That's creepy as hell, man. Anyway, next video. Alright, this next video that we're going to be reacting to this week is called 3 True Military Horror Stories. I mean, 3 Scary True Military Stories. That's how it's pronounced. Military? I never heard of any military horror stories, so let's go ahead and start, shall we?
My dad served in the Vietnam War from 1960 to 1962. For the longest time, he didn't tell anyone outside of the family this story, but he's in his mid-80s now, and he doesn't care about me sharing it with anyone. Not that I intend to release any of our names. I've heard this story told by him 5 times now, and each time I learn about new details he hadn't mentioned the time before. He didn't like to tell this story for obvious reasons, I think. Not only is thinking back to any of those events probably traumatizing, but also he would always say he felt it would be an inappropriate family gathering discussion. My dad did a lot of things in the war. At one point he was what was known as a tunnel rat, which was a soldier who performed underground search and destroy missions, usually in underground tunnels. My dad and 2 of his comrades were crawling through a deep tunnel, expecting to hit a booby trap or run into an ambush, but the tunnels were surprisingly empty and silent. My dad describes the experience of crawling through the silent, dark tunnels as bone-chilling and adrenaline-pumping, as the fear of instant death at any moment would linger. My dad and his comrades heard a faint yelling and crying sound further down the tunnels. It was of a woman. As they crawled deeper into the tunnels, the cries and screams became more clear. And it was obvious there was a woman screaming for help. The 3 picked up their pace, worried of a potential hostage or a prisoner situation. As they continued to crawl through the tunnels, the cries for help got a little louder and clearer. They arrived to a small room that they could slightly get off their knees in. The ceiling was just high enough to half stand, half crouch. There was a small table with a lantern on it that was still lit. There were also 2 broken chairs and a locked safe box with some metallic objects that would rustle around inside the box when shaken.
Underground?
Aside from that, this small room was empty. However, the tunnel continued past this room. So they continued deeper into the tunnel, but the screams for help had stopped at this point. My dad described this horrible, familiar stench of death that soon became overwhelming in the tunnels. They entered one final room with no further tunnels. My dad still refuses to describe everything that was in this room in detail, other than there were multiple bodies, and they weren't killed by just bullets. They looked as though they'd been mutilated by some kind of creature. One of the bodies was that of a woman. The scene was so horrible that my dad and the 2 other tunnel rats had to turn around and flee. They had no explanation for what could have done what was seen in that room. On their crawl back out of the tunnels, they started hearing the cries for help from that woman's voice again. My dad says he and his comrades froze and looked at each other with wide eyes and obvious fear in their faces. They had made it to the end of that tunnel. There were no living things from there to the end of it. Yet those screams for help were coming from the direction that they just were. They picked up their pace even more. My dad was in the back of the group of 3, and he says he would look back every 10 seconds, thinking he was hearing sounds from behind him, fearing he would see someone or something approaching from the darkness. They made it back to the surface eventually, and marked the entrance with a flag that signified to his team that the tunnel had been searched and cleared. Most tunnels would be interconnecting as a means of underground transportation and cover, but my dad says this tunnel was unusual to abruptly end. He says it was easily the most gut-wrenching, horrific, nightmare-inducing thing he'd experienced in his entire 2 years in Vietnam.
I bet. Holy crap.
My basic training for the Air Force was at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. After that, I was sent to Shepherd Air Force Base for technical school, and after my graduation, I received orders to McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. There, my job was aerospace mechanic at first. I started on the night duty, unfortunately, so my sleep schedule was basically non-existent. My duties basically were lugging plane parts like anti-ice valves, igniters, ignition exciters, sensors, and more from the warehouse to the flight line. It was for the most part boring, repetitive work, especially at night. A lot of sitting around and playing games on my phone, but nobody heard that from me. It had to be like 4 a.m. at this point. I was waiting for the other guy to come drop off some parts to the flight line. He'll be referred to as Mark for the purpose of this story. I was waiting by the back cargo area of the plane we were working on at the time, sitting on a box scrolling through my phone. Mark was taking an incredibly long time with his delivery, so I shot him a few texts. When they went unresponded to, I tried calling him a few times. The calls rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I figured he was either screening his calls, lost his phone, or was just very busy at the moment. I waited and waited, and he never showed up. Eventually I got a call from Mark's number, so I picked up, but it wasn't Mark's voice on the other end. It was some random guy. He sounded like a grown man in his 40s. He said he saw I tried calling a few times and said he found this phone on the ground outside of the base. I described what Mark looked like and asked him if he had seen anyone who may have resembled him. He said he had not. It's not like he would have been allowed on the base, so my only option was to drive out there and meet him. I asked him where he was, and he gave me the name of a nearby joint where I agreed to meet him. I walked to my car, which was parked in the closest parking lot, and I drove off the base towards the place he told me to meet him. While I was mid-drive, I remembered Mark was sharing his location with me. Long story, but we basically met these 2 girls this one night while off base who we separated from each other with. We, as a joke, started sharing our locations with each other in case we got quote-unquote murdered, as we kept joking. We joked about it mainly because we met them at a sketchy dive bar, but I'm not about to get into that. The place the man on the phone told me to meet him was called Tara's Tavern in Cookstown, the closest town to the base. I pulled up the location of Mark's phone and it checked out. It showed Mark's phone location right next to Tara's Tavern. This begged the question, what was that man doing there this late? At this hour, The place wasn't open, and there were 0 cars on the road. I pulled into the little parking lot and parked. I stepped out and called Mark's phone again. The guy picked up, and he spoke in a noticeably lower voice now. I told him I was in the parking lot of the pub, and he said he was as well. He said in almost a whisper, "I'll be right over," and he hung up. It was weirder in the moment than it sounds explaining it. I looked at the location on my phone to see if it was updating, but it seemed the location of Mark's phone was in this small patch of woods about 200 feet long and 200 feet wide. I tried calling again and it went straight to voicemail. I looked around the whole parking lot but didn't see anyone. I was all alone, not even an occasional passing car. I looked to the woods when I heard something over the sound of the crickets, like someone's footsteps, and then I saw a man. It was him. He was standing just behind the tree line between the woods and the parking lot. He called to me, "Are you alone?" And the sight of him, only his upper body visible, it was freaky as hell. I called back, "No, why?" as I inched my way closer to my car. This was one giant red flag. He called back, "Who are you with?" I didn't answer that. I got in my car and drove back to base. I called my supervisor and told him Mark was missing and someone was hiding in a patch of woods with his phone. My supervisor told me he was with Mark at that moment. He told me to meet them at the small building by the flight line. I met with the 2 and told them once again what I witnessed when tracking his phone. Mark told me what happened. While off the base, he was approached by somebody outside of a 24/7 convenience store, asking for a ride back to the base. Mark believed that he was actually in the Air Force at first and let him in the car. But as they were driving, the man asked Mark to pull over by the woods so he could pee real quick. Mark obliged for some reason. As Mark was pulled to the side of the road by the same small patch of woods by Tara's Tavern, he wasn't paying attention for a minute, and his door was opened by the man. Without a second to even react, the man was grabbing Mark's arms and squeezing them as he tried to pull him out of the car. Mark said he kicked at the man's groin area until he let go. He dropped his phone and it fell out of the car during the struggle, but as he was free, he drove the car away with the door still open at first. And next thing that happened was he went back to the base to talk with our supervisor. We of course called the police and all went to Tara's Tavern to check if the man was still there. The location of Mark's phone was no longer popping up on the map. It's possible the man destroyed the phone. All we did was file a police report. Some people out there are actually crazy and dangerous. Who knows what he would have done to either of us if he had gotten us in the woods.
Crazy. Everyone's crazy and dangerous.
During my days as a Marine, I had many different jobs on site, but my least favorite was graveyard patrol. At one point, I was one of the few with the overnight graveyard patrol shift for a nearby memorial cemetery. As you would imagine, it was a pretty slow shift with not much going on. Oddly enough, even though the cemetery was in a remote location surrounded by dense forest on each side, and I was working the literal graveyard shift, I found the job more relaxing than scary or unnerving. I would be the only one in the cemetery, and my relief would come around 4 a.m., which would be the end of my shift. So this had to have happened past 3 a.m., nearing the end of my shift. It was on this otherwise regular night that I was patrolling near the perimeter fence where some of the older headstones were. I wasn't allowed to be on my phone. If I were to be caught with my phone, I would be reprimanded. Even though it was unlikely to be caught since there was no one else really around except for me, I tried my best to follow that rule. So it was just a lot of walking around and looking at old headstones. But anyway, while patrolling past some of the older ones, I began to hear a woman's humming. It was this very calming, soothing kind of humming, only I wasn't calmed or soothed, because nobody was supposed to be in the cemetery, so it was more so a cause for concern. I started following the sounds of the humming. It was coming from behind this intentionally planted line of thick trees with vines and brushes sprouting from the sides of them. Instead of walking around the long wall of trees, I squeezed through the vines and bushes to the other side, cutting myself in the process. As I struggled to make it to the other side, the humming suddenly stopped as quickly as it started. I was left alone to the silence once again, not even the sound of a cricket. I walked closer to the edge of the memorial property, by the woods, near a few of the big mausoleum-looking structures, and I could distinctly hear some kind of buzzing sound coming from one of them. I stepped up the 3 white steps into the structure. The little door didn't have any kind of locks on it. I'd never been in any of these structures until this point, and I was incorrect in my assumption that they were mausoleums. I still don't know what the purpose of them were, maybe some kind of memorial building for deceased veterans in the cemetery. As I was inside that cold, dark structure, I could actually feel the hairs on my arms begin to stand up as I got goosebumps for reasons I wasn't sure of just yet. That buzzing sound was coming from inside of the structure, but it almost seemed like it was coming from beneath my feet. I looked down to the wood floor, and there were tiny round holes in each plank of wood, it seemed. Big enough to look through, but way too dark down there to see what lay below the floorboards. I had an idea. I positioned my phone on the floorboard just right so that the flashlight would shoot light into the hole in the wood, and I would look through one of the other holes. I lay basically flat on the floor with my head pressed up to the wood, one eye closed. I expected to see nothing at all, but I saw what appeared to be the top of a woman's head, and as if she knew I started looking immediately, she looked up at me through the hole. I only saw her face for maybe half a second before I fell backwards and let out a blood-curdling scream. I sprinted back to the parking lot and called the guy who was supposed to relieve me soon, and I told him to meet me now. When he showed up, I tried to convince him that I was telling the truth about what I'd seen in that little building. He entertained me by coming with me to it, and I repeated what I did earlier with my phone flashlight. He looked through multiple holes but saw nothing. I had to check for myself, and he was right. It was just some small, empty-looking space underneath the structure. I spent the rest of the shift with him. I left at 4 on the dot. I know he didn't believe me. I wouldn't have believed me either. I'm sure it's a possibility that it was a hallucination as a result of my lack of sleep. But I also believe it's a possibility that I witnessed a spirit or something completely supernatural. I'd heard so many older Marines and veterans tell of supernatural experiences they had while serving. I don't know who the woman that I saw could have been if it truly wasn't my imagination, but it chills me to the bone to imagine it having been one of the women buried in the cemetery.
I freaking bet, dude. Well, yeah, those are pretty creepy ass stories. But anyway, next video. Alright, the last video that we're going to be reacting to this week is called 3 Scary True Crazy Best Friend Horror Stories. Well, I've heard some of that stuff before. Probably from a different channel, I don't even remember where, but anyway, let's just go ahead and watch it. I'm scratching, not picking, guys.
This is a very delicate personal story of mine, so I'm gonna change names and small details around so nobody may recognize it to be me. I'd been good friends with a girl named Jess for almost 6 years, since high school basically. We even went to college together and dormed together. When we were in our junior year of college, we moved out of the dorms and into an off-campus apartment. It was a 3-bedroom apartment, and our third roommate was our friend Stacy. We were less close with Stacy, but we had no problems with her. In fact, the 3 of us would go out together on the weekends. I just had more of that best friend tell everything vibe with Jess, if you know what I mean. It was the spring semester, spring break was approaching, and we were planning the days we'd be going home. Stacy and I were planning on leaving the same day. Jess was going to be staying an extra day because she said she needed to work one final shift at her job. So the day came that Stacy and I left. I said bye to Jess, even though I would probably be seeing her the next day at home. I left and hit the road. But you ever forget something, and when you remember it, it hits you like a brick? That was what happened to me while on the freeway. I pulled to the side of the road in a hurry and checked my bags for my laptop. I checked my backpack too. I realized I had forgotten it. I had driven half an hour already, and now I had to go back just to get my laptop. As much as I didn't want to, I had to. I couldn't go almost 2 weeks without my computer. So my half-hour drive back to the apartment began. When I got back, I let myself in and called for Jess, ready to tell her what an idiot I was. She didn't call back, so she didn't appear to be in the apartment. Her door was wide open though. She usually kept it shut, especially when she wasn't home. I checked my room for my laptop up and down, but I couldn't find it. Curiously, I walked to Jess's doorway and looked into her room, and there it was. My laptop was open on her bed, next to her laptop. Why didn't she call or text me? I went to pick it up and saw my laptop was signed in. She somehow got into my account. That meant she knew my password. I switched to looking at her laptop, and it got worse from here. There was a folder open, containing a bunch of pictures. Pictures of me. Some of the most disturbing pictures I found were pictures of me passed out on the couch after drunk nights out, and pictures of me in a towel, either in my room or in the bathroom. My heart was racing. I shut my laptop and started searching her room, her closet specifically, and I found a number of my belongings, mostly articles of clothing. Some I won't mention because it's disturbing and embarrassing. I grabbed all my stuff I could find and stormed out. I locked my bedroom door and left the apartment. I didn't call Jess. I called my parents as soon as I got back in my car. They didn't have any words. They couldn't even give me advice because this was so messed up. By the time I got home, I saw Jess blocked me on everything. Instagram, Snap. I assume she blocked my number too, but I never tried contacting her again. By the time I got back to the apartment a week and a half later, all of her stuff was out of the apartment. I didn't see her again for almost a whole year, until she was out with our mutual friends and we ran into each other. She wouldn't even look at me. She couldn't even gather the courage to confront me about it. The person that I thought was my best friend for 6 years was a sick, twisted stalker storing lewd pictures of me and stealing my belongings. This brought to light an incident that happened our first month in the apartment. I was drunk after a night of drinking, and I woke up shortly after falling asleep to a sound in my closet. I remembered sitting up, rubbing my eyes and looking around the room, thinking I saw and heard someone in the closet. I was so scared that I ran to Stacy's room screaming because her room was closer. By the time she went to check the room with me, the closet was empty, and Jess allegedly never woke up to come check the commotion. It made sense to me now that she was in my closet that night. I get sick to my stomach thinking about all the things that she may have done that I will never know about. My old best friend Jason had a number of disorders. Well, I guess if you'd call them that. He had insomnia, he frequently had night terrors, and he battles depression. I'm sure he's got other personal issues that he doesn't really share. All I know is he takes a lot of medication. One day, he and his roommate were having serious issues, worse than usual. Jason called me all distressed, saying they just got into a screaming match with one another, and it almost got physical, and that he needed a place to crash for a couple nights. I told him not a problem. He could sleep on the couch in my apartment for a few nights. When he arrived, I tried pressing him for more details on the fight, like why it happened, but he didn't tell me anything. I respected that though. If he didn't want to share personal details like that, I wasn't going to press him further for it. He dropped his backpack full of clothes in the corner of the living room, and he kind of just watched TV and played Call of Duty on my Xbox for most of the day and night. I hung out with him for a bit, but I had my own things to take care of. When I got home, Jason was passed out on the couch under a blanket. I passed him quietly and got ready for bed. I woke up randomly, feeling extremely thirsty, and the water bottle I kept next to my bed was empty. So I quietly went through the living room towards the kitchen. As I passed by the couch, I couldn't help but notice Jason wasn't on it. His bag was still in the corner of the room though, so it's not like he left. Maybe he ran to the bathroom. Either way, I didn't look around for him. I went back to my room and kept the door open a crack. It was a long time that I didn't hear Jason leaving the bathroom though, or simply laying back down on the couch for that matter. So I was going to get back up and look around for him just because I was concerned. But as I got up, I started hearing these ticking or clicking sounds, kind of like a rodent. I looked around the dark room, and only then did I notice Jason standing in the corner of my room, arms flat at his sides. I let out a scream and jumped, startled as putting how I felt mildly. Yes, even in this dark room, I was able to realize it was Jason. I threw my pillow at him and yelled, "What the actual hell are you doing?" He flinched and he stopped making the ticking noises, then walked out of my room in this stiff, creepy manner. I heard him basically collapse onto the couch. I stepped out into the living room to try to talk to him. He didn't answer. I realized he must have been sleepwalking. The next morning I asked him about it, and he said he didn't remember any of it. I asked him if he tends to sleepwalk. He said no, or at least not that he was aware of. But other than that, the day was pretty normal. We chatted and hung out in the living room for a while. Then I had to go out and run some errands. He'd be staying one more night at my place. I once again woke up randomly in the middle of the night. This time I wasn't thirsty, so I don't know what woke me up. But for curiosity's sake, I got up to check if Jason was on the couch. He wasn't. Not again. I called Jason's name pretty loud. He wasn't in the bathroom or the kitchen, nor did he seem to be in my room. I climbed back into bed and tried texting his phone, but nothing delivered, so it seemed to be off. I called his name one more time, really loud, and then I heard this disturbing, muffled speaking sound. I looked at the closet where it was coming from, and I saw through the 6-inch opening, Jason's face in the dark, peeking through the door, his hands over his mouth. I yelled at him full volume to get him out of my closet. He didn't listen. He had to be sleepwalking again. I went to the closet to open it fully. I grabbed his arm and pulled it to get him out of the closet. But as I did that, I saw the big carving knife in his hand. I looked at his half-lifeless looking face and ran to the bathroom and locked myself in. I considered calling the police, but I didn't. I waited until I heard him go back to the couch. Then I ran to my room and locked the door. I didn't understand how sleepwalking could escalate to a level that he'd be picking up weapons. It didn't seem right. Laying in my bed at 3 in the morning, I DM'd his roommate telling him what just happened and asking him what happened between the two of them. He didn't reply until the next morning. I woke up to 3 long DMs from his roommate. Basically, in short, he told me Jason is a sicko freak who needs help, and he said Jason came into his room with a knife the last night he was there and was standing at the foot of his bed before he tackled him to the floor. He said Jason claimed it was sleepwalking, but his roommate didn't believe it. This made the whole thing even scarier because Jason told me that he doesn't sleepwalk, or not that he's aware of. I asked Jason to leave that day because of what was going on. He did so. I think he went back to his mom's house. Jason and I still follow each other on social media, but I kind of faded things out from him after that. I still don't know what to make of him or the fact that he brought a knife into more than one person's room in the middle of the night.
That is not sleepwalking, man.
This is a deeply personal and disturbing story. I'm not sure why I'm choosing to share it with the internet, but here goes. I don't have too many friends. Up until a few days ago, I looked at this guy Milo as my best friend for a while. I met him in one of my college classes. We got along mostly because we always cheated on tests together and helped each other to find the answers for our homework assignments. Eventually, we started hanging out outside of class, and I would sooner or later start telling him a lot of personal stuff that I didn't tell many other people. Just because I felt most comfortable with him didn't mean I saw him as this super high quality, genuine guy. He was just someone I thought was somewhat there for me. There was this one night I didn't have plans, so I hit him up and he suggested we hit one of the bars in town. I drove the two of us there since I wasn't planning on getting too drunk. This night though, he for whatever reason decided to get blackout wasted, ordering shot after shot, mixed drink after mixed drink. I had a couple drinks and cut myself off so I could drive. Milo was so drunk that he was approaching random girls and saying some pretty foolish things that were causing me to cringe. At one point I had to apologize to these two girls for him and tried to make light of it, but really the night just wasn't going the way I wanted it to, which was to have a chill, laid-back night out with my friend. He made it stressful, so I pulled him out of the bar and sat him in my car to drive us back to his apartment. I'd never actually been inside of his apartment before. This was the first time. I walked him inside and laid him down on his couch, where he instantly seemed to just crash and pass out. He dropped his phone out of his hand and onto the floor but didn't flinch. So yeah, he was out. His phone was on and unlocked though. Honestly, I always wondered what the hell Milo even did for work, considering he always seemed to be down to spend money but never talked about work. In a perfect world, I shouldn't have done this, but I picked up his phone and started going through his camera roll. I don't know what I was expecting to find, honestly. I was really just being a sneaky snoop. But I was doing it because I often thought Milo was a little sketchy and was hiding some things. His camera roll was full of junk, like screenshots of websites, texts, and a bunch of selfies. So I went to the album section and found this suspicious album titled Girls. I opened it expecting to find nudes or porn pictures or whatever, but no, it was much worse. What I found in there were pictures of young women tied up to a bed, and a lot of the pictures the women were visibly distressed and crying. I won't get into any graphic detail, but the pictures were disturbing. I thought maybe they were from the internet at first, but I took note of the blue bed cover. I went to Milo's room and flicked on the light. When I saw the blue bed cover, I shook my head in disgust, and I guess because I actually had no idea how to feel. I sent a couple of the pictures to myself, then deleted the texts off his phone. I put the phone back on the floor next to him and left. The next day he texted me, "I know you went in my room. We need to talk now." He followed that up with, "If you saw any pictures, they were just role-playing pictures." I ignored him. I didn't know how he knew I saw the pictures though, and I don't know how he knew I was in his room. That next night he came to my door and rang the bell like 30 times. I ignored it. And hours later, when I was trying to sleep, rocks were thrown at my window, and I heard Milo outside calling up to me. Moments later, I heard him trying to open one of my windows. That's when I picked up my phone and called him, and yelled at him to simply leave me alone or I would be calling the cops. Then I hung up. He didn't text me or call me again. I still have those two pictures on my phone, and I'm really wondering what I should do and how I should proceed with it. If he really knows I saw those pictures, I don't know if he's going to target me if he gets the chance, or if he's going to move out or what, but at this very moment, I'm a little scared for my well-being.
I freaking would be too. Just wow. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this Frightful Fridays. And yes, this was another Mr. Nightmare videos reaction week. But I really like him. I love listening to his stories, and I think I might listen to a little more after this, but off camera. So if you guys would like some more some more vids of me reacting to videos, scary or otherwise, let me know in the comments below. Follow my Instagram, Twitter, and DeviantArt, and I will see you all next time. Stay spooky!